Treaty of Utrecht, 1713, the dawn of the British Empire and the new European order. Beneath the gloomy skies of a war lasting over a decade, the Dutch city of Utrecht witnessed the birth of one of the most formative treaties of modern European history, the Treaty of Utrecht of 1713. This was not only the end of the bloody Ludal War of the Spanish Succession, 1701 to 1714, but also a comprehensive re-establishment of the continental political order, marking the superior rise of the British Empire on the global colonial chessboard. Roots of the war: an empty throne. The death of King Carlos II of Spain in November 1700 without a direct heir ignited a succession crisis. His will bequeathed the entire vast Spanish Empire, encompassing not only the Iberian Peninsula, but also the Spanish Netherlands, modern-day Belgium, Luxembourg, Milan, Naples, Sicily, Sardinia, and especially the immense colonies in the Americas and Asia, to Philippe, Duke of Anjou, grandson of the powerful King Louis XIV of France. This event sent shockwaves throughout Europe. The prospect of the continent's two most powerful kingdoms, France and Spain, uniting under one monarch, creating an uncontrollable superpower, was a terrifying nightmare for neighboring states, particularly Great Britain, under Queen Anne, the Dutch Republic, and the Austrian Empire under Emperor Leopold I, himself a claimant to the Spanish throne through Habsburg lineage, quickly formed the Grand Alliance, 1701. Their goal was clear: to prevent French hegemony and partition the Spanish inheritance in a more balanced way. Battlefields aflame, bloodshed and stalemate. War erupted fiercely on multiple fronts. The Low Countries became the main battlefield, where the talents of Britain's Duke of Marlborough, John Churchill, and Austria's Prince Eugene of Savoy shone with resounding victories like Blenheim, 1704, Ramillies, 1706, Oudenarde, 1708, and the Malplaquet, 1709. However, each victory was bloody and failed to completely subdue France. Iberian Peninsula. A fierce war for the throne raged between Philippe V, supported by France, and Archduke Charles of Austria, supported by the Grand Alliance, later Emperor Charles VI. The British captured Gibraltar, 1704, and Minorca, 1708, but could not overthrow Philippe V in Madrid. Colonies. Conflict spread globally. Fleets and mercenaries clashed in North America, the Caribbean, and the Indian Ocean. After over a decade, the war descended into a bloody stalemate. The great powers were all financially and manpower exhausted. Louis XIV of France, though significantly weakened after initial defeats, and the terrible famine of 1709, resisted tenaciously. In Britain, the Linke Treaty, led by Robert Harley, later Earl of Oxford, and Henry St. John, Viscount Bolingbroke, came to power, 1710, eager for peace to reduce the tax burden and promote trade. The Austrian Emperor Charles VI, after succeeding to the Holy Roman throne, 1711, also became more rigid, but simultaneously faced new threats in the east. The need for peace became more urgent than ever. Utrecht, the fateful negotiating table. The neutral city of Utrecht was chosen as the negotiation site. Talks began in early 1712, but were extremely complex and protracted. A defining feature of the Utrecht peace negotiations was the absence of a single common treaty, but rather a series of bilateral treaties signed separately between the warring parties, primarily in April 1713. Britain, France, 11th of April 1713, the foundational treaty, establishing most key terms. Britain, Spain, 13th of July, 1713, regulating Spain's concessions to Britain. France, Netherlands, 11 April 1713. France, Prussia, Portugal, Savoy, around the same time. Austria, Spain, Rastatt, 1714, and Austria, France, Baden, 1714. Signed later, formally ending the war on the continent. Terms that changed the world. The treaties of Utrecht and later Rastatt and Baden redrew the political and colonial map of Europe. The Spanish succession issue. Philippe, Duke of Anjou, was recognized as King Felipe V of Spain. Crucial condition: Philippe V had to permanently renounce all rights of succession to the French throne for himself and his descendants. Similarly, French princes renounced their rights to the Spanish throne. This aimed to ensure the permanent separation of the kingdoms of France and Spain, alleviating Europe's greatest fear. The rise of the British Empire. Strategic territories. Gibraltar, the fortress controlling the entrance to the Mediterranean from the Atlantic, and that the possession thereof, with all manner of right forever, without any exception or impediment whatsoever may remain. Anglo-Spanish Treaty, Article 10. Island of Minorca, Mahon, another crucial naval base in the western Mediterranean. Commercial and colonial rights in the Americas. Asiento de Negros, a 30-year monopoly to supply African slaves to Spanish colonies in the Americas. This was an extremely lucrative contract, bringing enormous profits to British merchants and a root cause of the later War of Jenkins' Ear. Navío de permiso, the right to send one merchant ship per year, with a capacity of 500 tons, to the fair at Portobello in Panama for direct trade with Spanish colonies, a significant commercial loophole. Acadia, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, Hudson Bay. Britain officially acquired these territories from France, consolidating its presence in North America, though France retained Cape Breton Island and fishing rights off Newfoundland. The Most Christian King of France does yield and make over to the Queen of Great Britain all Nova Scotia or Acadia, and also all that tract of land along the coast, and in the same manner the city of Port Royal, now called Annapolis Royal, and all other things in those parts which depend on the said lands and islands. Anglo-French Treaty, Article 12. Note: the provided text excerpt refers to Hudson Bay, but the treaty article cited in the Vietnamese text, Article 12X, actually pertains to Hudson Bay, not Acadia. The description and quote for Acadia are found elsewhere in the treaty. St. Kitts. Britain gained full control of this wealthy Caribbean island. Recognition of the throne. Louis XIV formally recognized Queen Anne as the legitimate Queen of Great Britain and renounced support for Pope James Francis Edward Stuart, the Old Pretender, son of the deposed James II, helping stabilize the upcoming Hanoverian regime in Britain. The relative weakening of France. European territory. Had to cede some border areas to Austria and Savoy, but retained Strasbourg and Alsace. Colonies. Lost Acadia, Newfoundland, St. Kitts, though retained Cape Breton and built the formidable fortress of Louisbourg. Influence. While securing the Spanish throne for his grandson, France was weakened militarily and financially after the war and had to accept the principle of the balance of power directed against it. The strengthening of Austria and allies. Austria received the bulk of the Spanish inheritance in Europe, the Spanish Netherlands. Belgium. Modern Belgium and Luxembourg, the Kingdom of Naples, Sardinia, Milan, and the Mingi Presidi, Tuscan coastal towns. This transformed Austria into a major power in both Central and Southern Europe. Savoy, elevated to the Ghitan Kingdom of Sardinia, after exchanging Sicily with Austria for Sardinia in 1720, and gained additional territory like Sicily, temporarily, and part of Milan. Prussia. King Friedrich Wilhelm I was recognized as king in Prussia, elevating the Duchy of Prussia to a kingdom, a crucial turning point for Prussia's later rise. Netherlands secured its southern border security, barrier fortresses, a line of fortresses in Belgium, garrisoned by the Dutch to deter France, and some commercial concessions from France. However, the war had exhausted Dutch financial and naval strength, marking the beginning of their decline as a leading power. International recognition. Portugal regained territories occupied by France and secured some favorable commercial terms. Principality of Catalonia, abandoned by its allies. After a valiant resistance supporting Archduke Charles, Barcelona fell in 1714, and Catalonia's traditional privileges, fueros, were abolished by Felipe V. Far-reaching consequences, the legacy of Utrecht. The Treaty of Utrecht left an indelible mark, the principle of the balance of power. Utrecht formalized and elevated the importance of this principle in European international relations. No single power was permitted to become so strong as to threaten the freedom and security of others. This became the guiding principle for European diplomacy for centuries to come. The rise of Great Britain. Utrecht was a historical turning point, with strategic naval bases, Gibraltar, Minorca, vast territories in North America, and especially exclusive trading privileges in Latin America, asiento, navío de permiso. Britain laid the solid foundation for the Mo Empire on which the sun never sets. In the 18th century, British naval and commercial power became unmatched. The decline of Spain. While retaining its vast overseas colonial empire, Spain lost almost all its important European territories to Austria and Britain, having to accept disadvantageous commercial terms. Asiento, navío, also weakened its economy and sovereignty in the Americas. Strengthening of nationalism and absolute monarchy. Utrecht reinforced the system of nation-states with absolute monarchies as centers of power. The recognition of new dynasties, Bourbon in Spain, the upcoming Hanoverians in Britain, and royal titles, Prussia, Savoy, Sardinia, were testament to this. Seeds for future conflicts. Utrecht resolved many issues but also sowed seeds for new conflicts. Austria's dissatisfaction at not gaining the Spanish throne, Spain's resentment over the loss of Gibraltar and imposed trade privileges, along with France's ambition for revival, would continue to shake Europe in the War of the Austrian Succession, 1740–48, and the 7 Years' War, 1756–63. Utrecht in the flow of history. The Treaty of Utrecht was not merely a peace treaty. It represented the end of an era of religious and dynastic wars, initiated by the Peace of Westphalia 1648, and the dawn of an era of imperial and global commercial competition based on the balance of power. It laid the foundation for the relatively stable, long 18th century in Europe, though wars still occurred, during which Britain rose to lead the race for colonies and control of the oceans. Britain's success at Utrecht stemmed not only from Marlborough's military might, but also from the astute diplomatic vision of Bolingbroke and Harley. They understood that Britain's true strength lay in the seas and trade, not in pursuing costly continental conquests. Utrecht was the blueprint for the British Empire, an empire built on trading ports, fleets, and commercial contracts, rather than on vast direct territorial domination in Europe. The Treaty of Utrecht of 1713 stands as a monument in diplomatic history. It extinguished the flames of the War of the Spanish Succession, established a new European order based on the principle of the balance of power, and above all, it ushered in the British century. The immense colonial and commercial benefits Britain gained, from Gibraltar and Minorca controlling the Mediterranean to the North American lands and especially the Asiento right, laid the solid foundation for the maritime supremacy and unprecedented economic prosperity of the British Empire. Utrecht was not just the end of a war, but the beginning of a new imperial era, shaping the destiny of Europe and the world for hundreds of years to come. The guns may have fallen silent in Utrecht, but its echo, the echo of empire, of commerce, and of the fragile balance between great powers, continues to resonate throughout human history.